Hi, my name is Red Protocol. I'm one of the first people to hit new type in Season 4, and I've hit new type every single season of Gundam Evolution. I also play in the competitive scene, and I placed second in the last 20k.
So it's still fairly even across the board, but Fusion have to deal with getting that Mega Charge down, and they're not given the space to do it. Red Protocol helping out the Dom in the bottom line.
I'm going to make this tier list. It's going to be about the new Dynames season, and this is going to be mainly revolving around solo play, not so much competitive play. So, first off in the list, I have Asshimar. I'm going to put him in the S tier. Asshimar hasn't received any changes since the last patch, and Asshimar is just still insane. Actually, that's a lie. He did receive one stealth patch where his melee now continues even when he's dead. So Asshimar has actually improved since last patch. Asshimar is insane, and you want him on basically every map on every team. Almost always. Alright, so next up in the list is Barb. I'm going to put him in the B tier. Barb is a really good character right now. He's still great as an assassin. He still has his combos that can kill people very, very fast. And he still works really, really well in the shield characters. I do think, though, that Barb isn't as strong as he used to be. He's able to get killed pretty quickly. And if people would just pay attention and focus him, he shouldn't get too much value. This being said, this doesn't usually happen, and Barb can get away with a lot, so I'm going to put him in the B tier. He's almost at the A tier. In fact, thinking about it now, maybe he should be in A tier, but I'm going to commit and just say he's B tier. Alright, so the next unit is Turn A. I'm going to put Turn A in the B tier. Turn A is pretty strong right now, but he's not really good enough to be at the top of the top. He has a few maps where he's very, very powerful, and then a lot of maps where he's okay, mediocre, but you're probably better off picking other characters. With Methuss falling out of the meta, his ult combo has gotten weaker because when you use Turn A ult, you used to be able to Methuss combo with it, and then he'd be basically unkillable in the air unless he got hit by an ult, like Marasai or Asshimar punch. But since Methuss is kind of out of the meta, Turn A ult is a lot easier to counter than it was before. If people just pay attention and focus it, which they don't really do in casual, he's actually able to die pretty quickly in the air as long as you hit your shots. So with that in mind, I think Turn A is B tier, where he's pretty good, but he's not great. Alright, next up is Dom Trooper. Dom Trooper has received no changes since last patch, and I put him in S tier last patch, and there's nothing really to change my mind about that. Dom Trooper is still a fantastic character. His armor ability is great, his rockets are great, his right click is great, his ult is great, and then he also has mines on top of everything, because why not give him another ability that lets him reload cancel? Yeah, Dom Trooper's fantastic. Alright, next up, GM. He's actually moving up quite a bit from my last list. I'm going to put him in the B tier. I sort of didn't take into mind how powerful the 50% damage reduction when he shield bashes is. It allows him to escape a lot of powerful situations. His heal grenade is really good. Sometimes. I'm not going to say all the time, but sometimes his heal grenade is pretty good. Again, when he takes damage or anyone he heals takes damage, the healing stops, which is a pretty big bummer. But if you can get that heal grenade off in like a group of 3 people, it's pretty massive. His shield itself is actually very good. It lets him win basically any 1v1 in the game against a non-melee character. Speaking about non-melee characters, that's where this unit excels. If you're against the comp with no melee and you pick GM, you're going to get a lot of space for free because people can't just take the 1v1 with you. So if you see that the enemy team isn't running any melee and you're kind of struggling, I think GM is a great pick. Alright, next unit is Sniper. This is kind of spoiling my thoughts on Dynames a little bit, but I think Sniper is pretty irrelevant for the most part now. Sniper has one map where I think he's still playable, and that's Harbor Town. And even then, you might just want to pick Dynames instead, and by picking Sniper, you might be a little bit weaker and like sort of when the fights start really going. That being said though, on Harbor, Sniper is still a very powerful character. Those one-shots are really great, but I do think Dynames has pushed him a bit lower in the meta, and he's really only viable on Harbor. I think on any other map, you'd probably want to just be picking Dynames if you want to play a Sniper character. Alright, and next up is Gundam. I'm also going to move him up from my last tier list. I'm going to throw him in the B tier. So Gundam itself hasn't really changed, but just I think I've thought a little bit more about it, and while Gundam doesn't really have a spot in current comps, I think, if you're going for the best possible comps, Gundam is still a really powerful character. The burst potential in his headshots is crazy. You can two-shot half the characters in the game. His flail is a very good ability. Even with the cooldown nerfs that happened a long time ago, flail is still very strong. And while your shield has been pretty hurt by the nerf that happened a while ago, his shield is still decent at getting him out of sore spots where other characters would just die. His ult also, while I don't think it's very strong, in fact it's one of the worst ults in the game, you actually build it very quickly, and then when it does get value, it's like really great value. So yeah, Gundam, gonna throw him in the B tier. He's a character that's pretty powerful right now, but he's not so strong that he doesn't need some sort of buff to make him feel really great. Alright, next up is Heavy Arms. I'm gonna throw him in the C tier. So he's had a bit of a buff since last time, he got a bit more damage on his guns, but this doesn't really change the fundamental issue with this character. I still disrespect it if I ever get into a 1v1 with it, and I just take the fight and hope I can headshot kill it fast enough. And I think that's a big issue for the character. You just don't have to respect its damage output because he has to take that time to sort of rev up his guns, or if he's sending you with one gun, he's going to lose. And yeah, I think that's like the biggest issue with the character right now. You just don't have to respect it. I don't know how they fix that, but that's just the state it's currently in. And maybe it's okay that he's not going to be the greatest pick. He's still okay on some defense maps, and I think he actually works really well in the new mode because he can melt the core very quickly. But overall, C tier. Alright, next up, Hyperion. I'm going to throw him in the A tier. So I had him in the A tier in my last list, and he's actually received a buff since then. He got 2 seconds off of his F ability, which is actually a pretty big upgrade to his DPS. That ability was always very good, and by having that in a lower cooldown, he's able to produce more DPS at a longer range. So I think that's a pretty big buff for Hyperion. I think he feels pretty good to play right now. I think A tier is the perfect spot for him. I don't want him to mess with him at all. Basically, with this list, I think that A tier shouldn't be touched at all. I think they're in the perfect spot where they feel great to play, but they're not overpowered. And Hyperion fits perfectly into that category of he feels great to play, but he's not overpowered. Alright, next up, Marasai. Gonna also go in the A tier. So, Marasai received a buff since last patch. He does a bit more damage, has some more health, his spear does a bit less damage. So what this means is that your combo does a little bit less damage still, but your overall damage output is increased, you have more health, and because your overall damage output is increased, you're going to be building your ultimate faster. I think Marasai is in a great spot right now. Against teams with only 1 shield or less, I think Marasai is a fantastic pick. But when the enemy team starts running multiple shield characters, I think Marasai loses a lot of value because it's going to be a lot harder to get good hooks off. Also, shields do block your ultimate, so it's harder to get good hooks and good ults. So I think if the enemy team's running a lot of shields, you probably shouldn't be playing Marasai. But if the enemy team isn't running too many shields, I think Marasai is a fantastic pick right now. They've done a really good job sort of bringing this character up to a point where he feels good to play. Alright, next up, Methuss. Look at how they ruined my boy. Down in the C tier, below Heavy Arms. Yeah, Methuss just feels really bad to play right now. The healing nerf, it doesn't read like a lot, like I said, but it really is a lot because already healing in this game, you couldn't really... If you pocketed someone, they still couldn't win a 1v1 gunfight if they were already losing. And if this feels even worse now when you're pocketing people, I'll also say that because you're healing people less, you're going to build your ult slower, and that is also a pretty big nerf. Yeah, Methuss just doesn't really fit right now. If you're going to play a healer, you're better off either playing Unicorn or even GM. This being said, if you do have like a friend you want to pocket and make as powerful as possible, Methuss still works when you're doing that because you get those combos off, you pocket your buddy who you want to carry the game, and he can carry the game like that. But I think overall, pretty low value right now. He definitely needs some sort of a buff. I think definitely a revert on the heal nerf at minimum would help him, but I think even then, he's definitely fallen out of the meta a bit, and a lot of us have sort of realized that, Methuss was never as strong as we really thought to begin with. It was just that ult being so powerful and comboing that ult. But now that you build the ult slower, he really doesn't feel good to play at all. Alright, New Gundam. I actually put New Gundam in the top of my last tier list, but he's been nerfed very heavily since then. I actually think New Gundam is worse than he was at the start of Season 3 because of these nerfs. His gun is a lot worse, his funnels are worse, but they're still better than they were at launch. But overall, this is a pretty significant nerf to his damage output, and I think that has really killed this character, honestly. He's not the worst character in the game, he's still playable, so I put him in the top of my C tier. But yeah, these nerfs really hurt New Gundam. He's no longer that fantastic pick where you just wanted him in every single map. He's definitely been hurt by these nerfs, and yeah, that's a bit of a shame. I think they went a bit overboard with these nerfs because they just saw him explode and play great. But yeah, they definitely went overboard. He's still playable though. Pretty big nerfs. Alright, Pale Rider. I'm going to throw him at the top of S tier. This is the best character in the game. He can do it all. His damage output is insane. He has actually the fastest heal in the game with his healing station. He has one of, if not the strongest ult in the game with his Hades. And he has a fantastic gun that does a lot of damage. His EMP is actually really underrated. That ability is really strong. Really puts a big hamper on flanks like Barbatos and Zaku 2 ranged. Also, his grenade. Great at finishing off kills, finishing off bodies, finishing a fight when you run out of ammo. Pale Rider, best character in the game. You always want this in your team. If no one's playing Pale on your team, you should be playing Pale if you want to win. That character is way overpowered. Alright, Exia. Exia received a bit of a buff in this last patch. He does a bit more damage with his left click overall, but it does less damage with headshots, and his right click got its cooldown reduced. This has actually helped Exia quite a bit. I think that right click reduction was actually a pretty decent buff for him, because now he's able to get it off multiple times in a fight as long as he's staying alive, dashing around, using his mobility. This being said, I don't think Exia is still great. I think Barb is a better melee than him, but I think Exia is totally playable, and he's still a really fun character for people who like to play Exia, and I think he's at the point now where he's okay. Alright, next up, Sazabi. If this was a competitive tier list, I'd probably throw him an S, but for now, he's going to sit in the A tier. Sazabi is a fantastic character. The tank, he's the only real big tank in this game, and he does a great job at it. His shotgun is still insane if you get up close on people. His scan is probably the most underrated ability in the game by people in sort of casual play. It gives you so much info. It's a really great ability. Also, his axe is some great CC. His ult still isn't the best, but I think it's okay. His overall kit is just really powerful. You're going to want a Saz all the time, basically, if you want to win. Saz is a fantastic character. Alright, bringing in Mahiroo. Mahiroo, I'm going to throw him in the D tier. Mahiroo has been buffed since last time, but these buffs aren't enough to bring Mahiroo out of that sort of low spot in the tier list. I think Mahiroo is very, very weak still. I think he has one map, Missile Base, where he's actually pretty powerful on defense, but overall, I don't think that's enough to justify sort of playing this character on other maps. And I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here, or a bit of a tangent, but I think that's okay. I think if Mahiroo is powerful, then it's going to make the game really unfun, and it's going to make the game brutal on maps that Mahiroo is already decent on, like Missile Base. And I also think on Harbor, he's... Actually, no, with the Harbor changes, I think Mahiroo's gotten a lot worse on Harbor, because they can sit on two sides now. You can't just ricochet your bombs off. Yeah. So I think Mahiroo is only really good on Missile Base. I think the issue is that if Mahiroo is playable on more maps, then Mahiroo will become unbelievable on Missile Base, and I think it's sort of dependent on map design to make Mahiroo more powerful. So yeah, I think Mahiroo, they probably shouldn't mess with him anymore, honestly, but he's still a D tier niche pick character. Alright, moving on with my boy Unicorn. I'm going to throw him at the top of the A tier. Unicorn is a fantastic character right now. I don't think he needs any changes. His E and armor pop is just very powerful. His passive armor means he's always helping his teammates, and he himself has essentially 100 more max HP. And his gun and funnels do decent damage, and he has a good ult to pack it all off. Yeah, Unicorn, great character right now. I think he works on most maps, in most comps. Unicorn is a fantastic character if you're looking to spend your capital, get your first new unit. I think Unicorn's a great choice for that. Alright, next up, Guntank. Throwing him at the top of C tier. So, Guntank is actually a pretty underrated character by a lot of people in definitely the competitive scene. But in the casual scene, I think people rate him a bit too highly. A big issue with Guntank is he doesn't really have too much like sustained damage on one individual, because when you're just right click and firing, he's really not that powerful. His missiles though are pretty strong, his charges are pretty strong, so he can actually win like a one quick 1v1 a lot of the time if he's using his abilities correctly. This being said, like I said, a lot of his damage is kind of fake. He has a fantastic passive with his revive, but I do also think his ult is pretty weak. So overall, that just kind of puts him in the C tier. But I think that's okay for the auto-aim character to be a bit niche and lower in the tier list. I think if he was powerful, that'd be kind of bad for the game. So I think he's in a good spot right now. Alright, next up, Zaku 2 Melee. This character has gone down in the tier list, mainly just because whenever I see him in ranked, I kind of sigh and I know we're going to have a tougher game. I think this character really struggles to get value right now, and I think especially with the Methuss nerf, this has inadvertently also nerfed the Zaku 2 Melee. He was pretty dependent on a Methuss pocket to get some value. It's hard to consistently stay alive and build your rage, and I think even with your rage active, you're still not that strong of a character. He still has a really good ult, I'll give him that, but overall, yeah, I think Zaku 2 Melee is pretty weak. I think the only time you really want to pick him is as a direct counter to GM or Sazabi. Like if the other team's running a lot of shields, maybe Zaku 2 Melee is pretty decent, but overall, I think Zaku 2 Melee is a very weak character right now. Alright, Zaku 2 Range. Gonna throw him in the A tier right below Unicorn. In competitive play, I honestly think he's a bit higher, but in uncoordinated play, I'm gonna throw Zaku 2 Range tier. One of the best parts of Zaku 2 Range is how incredibly hard he is to deal with, and he can steal health packs from the other team. I think, though, in casual play, this gets a little bit less value because people aren't really as coordinated and they're not going for the health packs as much. But yeah, that being said, Zaku 2 Range, he has fantastic burst damage, he's super hard to deal with, he charges his ult quickly, and that lets him win fights very easily. And he's just a big nuisance for the other team. This character is in a really good spot right now. Might be a little bit too strong, honestly, but overall, yeah, Zaku 2 Range. Fantastic character. Alright, and what you've all probably been waiting for, where do I think Dynames, the new character, ends up in the tier list? I'm going to throw him at the bottom of the A tier. I think Dynames has come out, and he's in a really good spot. I think he's the first character who's been released post-season 1, who's come out and not been bad, but also he's not overpowered. I think that's why he's sort of perfect for the bottom of the A tier. I don't think he's great on every single map, but I think he's playable on a lot more maps than Sniper was. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that when he gets pushed and he's in close combat situations, he can pull out his pistols, and that can still help him with the damage. He also provides more utility to the team with the sort of suck ability, and his ultimate is very powerful, way better than Sniper's. So yeah, Dynames, gonna throw him in the A tier. This is a good new character. I'm glad they added him to the game. He makes the game feel a bit more fresh, and he's pretty fun. And with that, I think that's the end of the tier list. So thanks for watching. Make sure to follow me on all my socials. You'll find them in the description below. And feel free to tune into my live streams when I'm live on Twitch every once in a while. Yeah, thanks again for watching.